Bozo Show is on the air.
It is now time to play Bozo's Grand Prize Game!
Well, if you're like me, you cherish what you grew up with and who you grew up with. And I think in the 90s, 80s and 90s, we had some of the greatest television in history. I think we had some of the greatest kid shows ever. And when I was growing up, there was a show on WG in Chicago. It was all over the nation, but there was one that went national. And this is the one that went national. And even I got to see it here in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was the Bozo Show, WG in Chicago. And I grew up with the gentleman you see right here. This amazing man was Bozo from 1984 until the end of the show in 2001. It is a great honor, a huge honor to introduce to you the comedian, the one and only Joey Diaria. Joey, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, Todd.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, my God, I mean, where do we even begin? You have been in how long have you been in the business now?
Well, I would say over 50 years.
50 years. Wow. How did you get into it? Where did it all start?
Oh, typical things, drama club in high school, that sort of thing.
Right.
I then went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. And from there, I got booked into, after graduating, I was hired and was part of a traveling children's theater company. And then I went to Miamisburg, Ohio, where I did dinner theater for 2 years.
Wow.
And from there, I went out to the West Coast and did stand-up comedy, because back then that was the only way you could get a casting director to look at you, was to be saying that you're doing stand-up.
Right.
And one day I was taking an improv class. Somebody came in and said, Chuck Barris is so desperate for acts for the Gong Show, he's paying after a minimum, which back then was $150.
Oh, wow.
And that was my rent at the time.
Yeah.
And so I just came up with one stupid act after another and got booed off the stage, and then went home and collected a paycheck in a couple of weeks. But then one day, I actually won. I won on the Gong Show with an act called Dr. Flamo.
Yes.
And you're familiar with the act?
I'm familiar with Dr. Flamo, yeah.
Well, that won.
Yeah.
And it surprised me. It really did.
Where did Dr. Flamo come from? Where did that even come from?
I was just desperately trying to come up with one stupid act after another. I had them play the William Tell Overture, and I took a fireman's axe and beat a rocking chair to splinters. I just, anything stupid that popped into my head.
Right.
And I was thinking of like the Swiss bell ringers, who have the different size bells. And I figured, well, it was the early 70s, and everyone had candles.
Right. That was a big thing.
That was a big thing. And I just lined up a whole line of them from small to tallest, and held my hand over each flame and screamed at a different pitch depending on size candle.
Right.
And it won.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. But the good news was, not only did I collect my $150,
yeah,
I won the first prize, which was $1,000.
That's incredible.
Unless you wanted the trophy. If you wanted the trophy,
right,
then they only gave you $850.
Wow. That's kind of a jip.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was thinking, well, I wasn't expecting to get more than $150, and so as a result, I own this. Hang on, there. Do you
Whoa,
see
look
that?
at that. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
That's incredible. And you still have it to this day.
I still have it,
I love it.
and that was that was an exciting thing to have.
Absolutely. And it was from there that got you onto the Tonight Show, did it not?
Eventually,
Yeah.
I did the Jim Neighbors show.
Mm-hmm.
He had a talk show for a while,
You did. I remember that.
and I was working for Milt Larson, a man who founded the Magic Castle in Hollywood. Well, he said that Jim McCulley, who was Johnny Carson's casting director, was going to be at the Variety Arts Center that night to look at a couple of magicians that Milt wanted him to see. And Johnny Carson was a big magic fan. So he said, one of the guys does a really messy act. I was wondering if you could just come in front of the curtain, do Dr. Flamo. That's all the time we need to just clean up the stage for the next magician. And I said, sure. So I did it. And Jim McCulley had a reputation for never laughing at comedians.
Oh, geez.
He would watch them stone-faced because he was trying to analyze what made them funny.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky because he had two guests with him that night, Tim Conway and Harvey Korman.
Oh, my God.
And I did the act, and Tim Conway literally fell under the table. He just slid right off his chair. Yeah.
Whoa. Now, how did that feel? How did that feel to make someone like Tim Conway?
That really felt great. And I have to say that both he and Harvey Korman were a terrific audience.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's incredible. And you went on to
it was wild.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it was wild because as I was packing up my stuff to leave, Milt Larson ran up to me and said, Jim McCulley wants to talk to you at the bar. They want to book you on the Tonight Show. And that's how I got booked.
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't see the rehearsal.
And you ended up making numerous appearances on Johnny Carson, did you not?
No, only the one. Only the one. Yep. That was 1983, and that was pretty much towards the end of his run. He pretty much left around 84.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the tape of the Tonight Show that I sent to WGN that got me Bozo.
That's what got it. That's what did it.
Yeah. Yeah, they looked at that and said, we want that guy entertaining children. So,
the guy that puts his hand over fire. Let's bring him in, right? Yeah. Well, that leads to a great question, like, because when we heard that Bob Bell was retiring, it was a nationwide search. It was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came to you. Like what how did that feel? What did you think when you realized, oh God, I've taken over this role that is so coveted, not just in the Midwest, but now nationwide?
Well, it was very strange because I grew up on the East Coast, and there was a Bozo show on the East Coast. There were Bozo shows from Maine to California.
Right.
And after I did the Tonight Show, I got picked up by a personal manager, which, in my opinion, was, oh boy, this is the start of my career.
Yeah.
This woman spent a year turning work down for me because Joey Dioria doesn't do under fives, meaning under 5 lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then she dropped me and said, you can't get work in this town. And I mean, you've just poisoned my name with every casting director in Hollywood.
Right.
So I was panicking. She says, they're coming in to hold auditions for Bozo next week. I can get you in on that. And if you get it, no commission. And I went, well, let's just say I was very rude.
Yeah.
And informed her that I did not want her help and I did not want to be Bozo the Clown.
Right.
And she could just take a flying leap. And that was it. And I was on my way to another audition, and I found myself driving by KTLA on Sunset Boulevard. And I saw a line that stretched for 3 blocks of every mime, juggler, and Venice Beach street entertainer lined up to audition.
Wow.
And the main reason why I was so adamant in not wanting to audition was because I knew many, many people who were professional circus clowns, ex-circus clowns from Barnum and Bailey. I knew lots of guys who were jugglers and mimes and birthday party clowns, and I had none of those skills. So other than say, I'm not going to take the audition because I know I won't get it, I just basically said I don't want the audition.
Right.
And that was it. Several weeks later, my wife read an article in the Christian Science Monitor where the producer of the show, Al Hall, was complaining that the only people who've applied for the job have been mimes, jugglers, Venice Beach street entertainers.
Right.
And that's not what they wanted.
Yeah.
Because of the relationship between Bob Bell and Roy Brown, Bozo and Cookie.
Right.
They needed somebody to be Abbott to his Costello.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife said, they did everything but put your name in this article. And I said, all right, I'll send them the Tonight Show tape.
Right.
And within 2 weeks, I got a call to fly out and audition.
Wow. That's incredible. And this is now a thing of legend. When you met Roy Brown, you guys had the exchange of, I broke my arm in 3 places. Well, just don't go in those places. And that's when they knew this is the guy. This is the guy to do it. Yeah, this was it. And I love that exchange. And that leads to the question, was Roy Brown as much of a delight of a human being as he seemed on television?
He was the nicest guy in the world. He was really a very sweet man and a lot of fun. In fact, he and Marshall Brodeen, who played Rizzo, and I, we used to pretty much like several days a week go out on Marshall's boat on Fox Lake and just literally throw jokes at each other. Right. And it was just a wonderful working relationship.
That's incredible. It seemed like it was like a camaraderie. It was like a family together on that show. It never seemed like
we were wonderful.
Right. It was never like a battling of like reputations or egos. It was always just like one group together doing their thing.
When I first started with the show, I tended to defer to Roy a lot.
Right.
And Roy took me aside one day and said, I'm the second banana. You're the top banana.
Yeah.
He says, don't be so respectful. You gotta
pie him in the face sometimes.
Exactly. And that was we had to get that relationship going. Mm-hmm. I was a straight man. He was the comic. Now, when Bob Bell did the show, there were 4 clowns on the show.
Right.
And they had Fraser Thomas or Ned Locke.
Right.
And those were guys that took up the slack. But by the time I got there, it was just Fraser Thomas as the sort of host character.
Manager.
And but then Fraser passed away towards the end of my first season. And so I had to take up more of the announcer and interviewer responsibilities.
That is interesting because I go back and I look at those old episodes and even though Bozo obviously was the center of the show, you're right. The hosting duties was Ned Locke or Fraser Thomas, and Bozo was just one of the kooky characters on the show. Even though it always kind of reminded me of like Gilligan's Island. Even though Gilligan, it was his name was on the show, he was kind of just the goof that ran around the island, and it was really the episodes were about all the other characters, and that's kind of how it seemed like in those early days. Bozo was just one of the kooky clowns on the show.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then when Fraser Thomas died, you really did. You became the host of the Bozo show. You kind of had to take on more of a responsibility than even Bob Bell did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was wild. I mean, when Bob Bell started with the show, they had a 14-piece orchestra.
Right.
By the time I got there, it was a 3-piece combo.
Yeah. Exactly.
Then
trumpet, organ, and drums. That was all you had.
Yes. Yeah, trumpet, accordion, and drums. That was it. And and like my second season with the show, they basically said, we're cutting the budget. You can only have 1 musician.
Man.
Which caused us to panic because it needed the drummer for the rim shots and all of that stuff.
Right.
And I said, fine, you can have a drummer. But we also need the accordion player for the music. I said, how about if we just get rid of the trumpet player? And they went, no. You have to get rid of 2. And what happened was they held an audition, and Andy Matran came in with the midis and the keyboards, and he was able to make that keyboard sound like a 14-piece orchestra. He did amazing stuff.
Professor Andy, and how amazing was he? Because I have some old episodes recorded, and you would think if you didn't see him that there was a huge band behind the scenes playing all that music.
Yeah.
And it was just all him,
All him.
all him.
I mean, he was amazing.
Incredible about his work, and he actually is like a professional musician. Doesn't he like teach or things like that?
He doesn't teach. No. For instance, he does a lot of mood records, recordings, this new age kind of stuff. He does a lot of that. But he's also done a lot of music for advertisers. He did a lot of music for commercials that were produced at WGN.
Right.
So he's done a lot of commercial related work.
Right. But I mean, and well deserved, because like I said, I mean, even as a child, you couldn't help but be amazed that this whole thing was just coming out of one section of the room.
Yeah.
All him, and he managed to carry it all that time. Do you keep in touch with him? Do you ever talk with him?
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah. In fact, we were talking actually on a sad note. We were talking because Robert Urich, who played Rusty the Handyman, passed away recently, and we all kind of got together to touch base.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, myself, Michelle Gregory,
Yep.
who played Tunya. And I know that Kathy Schinkelberg heard about it, but she's been traveling a lot. She's doing a one-woman show all over the country, so he's hard to keep in touch with.
Right. And of course, she played Pepper on the show for a while.
Right.
And that really was so sad when I saw that, because it was kind of a double whammy over those last couple of years, because Marshall Brodeen passed away in 2019, and then Robin Urich last year. It's so sad. Does it feel kind of surreal as time goes on and we lose these amazing performers for you?
Yes, it really is, especially people who've been close friends.
Right.
Roy's health kind of took a turn, and I used to say it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Right.
So, and that was a tough loss. I missed him terribly.
Mm-hmm.
We had a number of people come in and fill in for a while. We had Adrian Zmed from
and that always shocked me, because he was on TJ Hooker. He was an actor on all different TV shows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was in town in a production of Lend Me a Tenor.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing that play at night. But he wanted something to do during the day. Right. And he had done some work on, I think, WGN's Easter Seal Telethon. And Al Hall said, would you like to maybe do the show for a couple of weeks? And so he said yes. So he was on the show for like 2 or 3 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now when I was growing up, Cookie was still on. Of course, it was sporadic. Mm-hmm. It was you, Professor Andy, and Spiffy the Clown, who I adored. But he wasn't on very long. Spiffy.
He was on for a season. Then he went back to LA to continue working there. But Michael Immel and I are actually old friends.
Really?
We used to work together at Universal Studios back in the 70s at Castle Dracula.
Oh,
yeah! It was an attraction in which there would be several Draculas and there were several Renfields, and Michael and I were each Renfields.
Wow!
Who worked with different Draculas. They did like several shows a day.
That's incredible, and that actually makes a lot more sense, because that's why I think one of the reasons why I value the Bozo Show so much as growing up is because that you, Roy Brown, and Michael Immel together were such a great trio. Like, you guys, again, the chemistry was insane, the three of you, and that makes more sense now that you guys had a history together.
Oh yeah. In fact, it was Michael Immel who phoned me and said, hey, there's an opening at Universal, come on down. I auditioned and got the part.
Wow.
And I ran into Michael Immel. He was touring with a Sesame Street show in which he was playing Barkley the dog. He was in that huge dog costume.
Really?
And they came on the Bozo Show to do a bit from the Sesame Street show on Bozo.
Yeah.
And I saw it was Michael, and it was just hysterical. It was, my gosh. And the show was ending in Chicago, and he was getting ready to fly back to L.A. And at that time, we needed somebody to fill in regularly because Roy's health was so touch and go for a while.
Right.
So he auditioned and was hired, and so that's how that worked.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, that's like I said, that's the grouping that I remember the most was the three of you, and it really. I'm sure a lot of people would debate what I'm about to say, but I think it was probably the best era because of just the chemistry, as you all knew each other so well, and Roy was just a mensch, and so that you guys working together was just so great.
Well, we were able to do comedy.
Mm-hmm.
As the show progressed, they started throwing in political correctness, and they started throwing in how the fact that we had to be educational and informational and not just fun.
Right.
And so that made it difficult, and I think we lost a lot of viewers during those years.
Well, let's get to that. Let's actually get to the big elephant in the room here, because for the first 10 years, you did it Monday through Friday in the mornings, as always. And then the big announcement came in 94. And I look at 1994 as just the biggest whammy for the show altogether, because that's when Roy officially retired, Marshall Brodeen officially retired, and then they did the unthinkable. They took you guys off of weekdays and moved you to Sunday mornings and had the Super Sunday show. Was the writing on the wall at that point, even though the show lasted another 7 years, was the writing on the wall at that point that the show was
it was getting there?
Yeah.
But because we had several big charity events that we did, such as the Bozo Ball, which was a black tie event, black tie, red nose optional, and you know, as long as we were a great publicity device for WGN, I felt safe. But then John Vitanovic became the general manager, and he had never liked the show.
Wow.
And what happens in corporate America is that they'll bring in one guy to axe everything, and he's the villain, and then for being the bad guy, they promote him, and then they bring in the new guy who will be the healer, who will then kind of usher in a new age of austerity, less austerity and more good stuff.
Broadcasting. It's such a wonderful thing. Yes.
It is. But that was it. But I knew that that was starting to be a problem. I think they brought me back for, I think, one of the last Bozo balls they did in 2001 or 2002. So yeah, so that was it.
Do you continue to play Bozo a little while even after the show and off the air?
Just for this one big charity event. There is a WGN employee who wears the suit and does all of the parades.
Right. I've seen pictures of him with Svengoolie and interacting with people in Chicago, as that still goes on. Yeah. But when 2001 rolled around and the announcement was made that the Bozo show was going away, were you surprised at that point?
No, not really.
No.
I like I said, the minute this fellow became the general manager, I knew the writing was on the wall. So.
Right. It was going down fast. The Bozo show ended, which I think it's a huge loss, because I think it's a character that needs to be remembered, and I just at times I just feel like we tend to forget.
Well, you see, the thing is, it's a different age, totally different age. GN was on the super satellite, but satellite stations have not, I should say, cable stations have not permeated the airwaves yet. WGN was a local show, and Bozo was a local show, but it was the last of the local in-house produced kid shows.
Right.
Stations like WGN, which had a tremendous reputation for producing musical shows, sports shows. WGN doesn't have the Cubs anymore. The Cubs have their own network,
Yeah.
I mean, when I started, GN had Cubs baseball, and then they had White Sox, and then the Bulls. The local CBS affiliate, I think, had the Bears. But but that was it. That was GN's identity: sports and Bozo, and that was the big thing. But I mean, it's pretty much a jukebox now. They have their morning news, their afternoon news, and their evening news, and everything else is stuff that is just punched in.
And
And
that's upsetting because they had so much potential of so many great things, and then they just they just kind of fell by the wayside.
well, I mean, they built that huge facility on Bradley Place.
Right.
It had three big studios. There has been talk for years that they're going to just sell that property, you know, and take down the TV station because the amount of stuff that they do, they could literally go back into the Tribune Tower in downtown LA and produce that kind of stuff from there.
And then exactly. So it's like why even continue? Just shut it down and start fresh.
Hmm. I mean, I hear rumors about that every year. I don't know if they're going to get rid of it or what, but
Yeah.
there've always been rumors.
Right. Well, that leads to the ultimate question. Of course, David Arquette, for those of you who don't know, recently bought the rights to Bozo from the Larry Harmon estate, and he plans on trying to bring Bozo back. And we just discussed it a little bit, but I want to get the ultimate answer here because in the last 20 plus years since the end of Bozo, clowns don't have the best reputation when it comes to it, whether it be horror movies or the real life horror that people experienced back in 2016. Clowns don't have the best reputation. The question is, would Bozo work in the 2020s in today's society? Do you think if David Arquette brings it back, would it work?
I don't know. It depends on what David Arquette does with it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I haven't really seen much of what he's been doing. I've seen a few clips that he's done with a couple of other clowns that he's working with. One girl called Jozo, and then he's got another guy called Nunu that he works with. And I know they've attended a number of clown conventions. I know they've been to one in, I think, North Carolina recently. Um, but it depends on where you go. I mean, you have to look at the history of clowning per se.
Right.
I mean, you go all the way back to the Roman comedies of Plautus, and it was always the clever slave fooling his dim-witted master kind of things that people could laugh at. Then with the advent of commedia dell'arte, all of the exaggerated characters, these were clowns. In Shakespeare, some of the more foolish characters would be referred to as clowns because they would be simple characters.
Mm-hmm.
Circuses did the same thing, but with the broad makeup, the makeup was mostly exaggerated so that people could see it from the back of the seats.
Right.
And Lon Chaney Sr., the father of Lon Chaney,
Man of a thousand
who was a
faces.
makeup artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he once said, "There's nothing frightening about a clown, but a clown in a cemetery at midnight is terrifying."
Very true.
You know,
That's
and there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the context in which you do it. I mean, you have a clown and a clown in a circus is delightful. Clown at a party is fun,
Right.
but having him standing on the outside of a wood, staring at your house, brandishing a letter opener,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
not the same. Doesn't it gives
yeah.
off a different vibe? Yeah.
It's not so much that clowns are creepy. It's just that the context that people put them in. I mean, I've had 2-year-old children run up and hug me, and I've had 5-year-olds run shrieking in terror.
Mm-hmm.
There are. It depends on the sensitivity of the child. Some people find clowns scary. Some kids find Santa Claus scary.
Right.
Easter Bunny scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's something different. It's not a person. So yes, it becomes frightening. And if a child is smart, he's wary.
Right. He knows. He knows
Yeah.
what's going on. Exactly. Well, there you have it. I mean, Bozo is a legend, and of course, you're a legend for playing him, without a doubt. Did you ever get to meet Larry Harmon? Did you get to
I
talk?
met Larry Harmon a number of times. When I first got hired, I went to Larry's office in in Hollywood, and he measured me for my first wig.
Really?
Yep.
Mhm.
He produced the wigs, and it's very interesting. When Bob Bell started the show in the 60s, the show was in black and white. People,
Right.
color TV wasn't being done yet. And they didn't know what color the suit was. All of the pictures that Larry Harmon sent them were black and white photographs. So they said to Bob Bell, "What color do you want the suit to be?" And he said, "Red."
Yeah.
So, yeah, Bob Bell's first suit, if you look at some photographs from the really early days, Bob Bell's suit was red.
Mhm.
And when Larry Harmon came to town to renegotiate the contract, he went, "Wait a minute, what's the deal with this red costume?"
Yeah.
And so they had to change it.
Yeah. And
Uh,
rightfully so. Blue works better for Bozo than red does. I will say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean that's an amazing thing. And what's next? What are you up to? What are you doing these days?
Well, I mostly do voiceover work. I did a lot of voiceover work in LA, but recently my wife and I moved to Idaho to be closer to our son and our grandchildren. But I have a little recording booth here in my office, and I knock out auditions and jobs for animation. The most recent thing I did was for a show called The Loud House on
Mhm.
Nickelodeon,
I've heard of that.
where
Yeah.
I played a ghost who's a practical joke playing ghost called Buzz. So so that was it.
Yeah.
It's just I keep busy with that. I'm going to be doing the Gem State Comic Con here in Boise, mostly because of my work with anime.
Mhm.
I did a show called Yokai Watch.
Mhm. I've heard of that.
Uh, yeah, I was the voice of Whisper, the yokai butler,
Oh wow.
and I did some video games in Ratchet and Clank: A Crack in Time. I was Alistair Asmith, and
Whoa.
so I've done a few cartoons. So I'm going to be up there signing autographs. Uh, I just need to get Fanboy Expo interested in me.
Yes, fanboy. If you're listening to
Yeah.
this, you're watching this, get this man to Knoxville soon.
Yes,
Immediately.
exactly.
I know there's
And
plenty of people on here.
well, actually,
Love it.
the neat thing about David Arquette, because I've spoken with him several times,
Mhm.
right now he's still promoting his movie "You Can't Kill David Arquette,"
Yes.
which covers his career as a wrestler.
Mhm.
Well, now he's going to start doing. He's now planning to start a documentary on the history of Bozo.
Nice.
And so he and I keep in touch every now and then. I know he wants to come out here and interview me, but he has given me permission to go to events and do autograph signings,
That's
which
awesome.
Larry Harmon never did, and which I am very grateful for. So
Absolutely. Is
I'm
it bad
hoping
that
to maybe get that.
is it bad that I always kind of got that vibe about Larry Harmon that he was extremely strict about Bozo and there was only certain things you could do with Bozo?
Larry Harmon, Larry Harmon, Larry Harmon's ownership of the character went beyond just owning a property. It was his personality.
Right.
When my second season on the Bozo Show, I was getting ready to start the second season, and I get a call that the general manager wanted to talk to me. So I went up to his office, sat me down. He said, "How's it going?" I said, "Great." He said, "Enjoying the show?" I said, "Very much." He said, "I got something for you." And he pulled 5 letters out of his desk, threw them across the desk towards me.
Oh, geez.
"Open one. Anyone. Read it." Put it up. Read it. "Dear WGN, we hate the new Bozo.
Oh God.
This guy is horrible. Fire him. Bring back Bob Bell."
Oh no.
And I went, "Uh-huh." And he went, "The other 4 are just as bad." And I went, "Uh-huh." He says,
Uh-huh.
"This is terrific." And I went, "Oh?" He said, "Yeah. We figured we'd get at least 200 or 300 letters saying that they didn't like you." He says, "We only got 5.
Oh,
If we got 100, we figured we're good. If we got over 500, we'd be a little nervous, and if we got 1,000, you'd be gone."
we got 1,000, you'd be gone.
Yeah.
I love that.
But this is good news for you.
Well, I mean, and it makes total sense because, like I said, you're the Bozo that I grew up with. I know Bob Bell from watching stuff online, but the millennials, we know Bozo. We watched Bozo on WGN. It was Joey Diaria, and your comedic talent and skills and your chemistry with Roy Brown and Andy Matran and everyone was just so on point, to the point that it's legendary. And so that's why I'm certainly glad that if David Arquette is doing anything, he's consulting you, because you are Bozo in the eyes of so many people.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to him and finding out more of what his plans are.
Right.
I know he's attended like things like Red Nose Day and World Kindness Day. He's also done some events at the what's the name of that marionette, the Bill Bard Marionette Theater in Los Angeles.
I've heard of that.
So I mean, he's doing stuff, but
Right.
Again, I'm not quite sure just what exactly he's doing. Someone told me that he has produced some Bozo related music, so I'll be very curious to find out about that.
Interesting. Well, we do look forward to it. And Joey, I can't thank you enough for being on the show with us. You are a legend, and I'm starstruck. I can't believe I'm talking to one of my childhood idols. I love you so much, and thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Well, thank you, and we'll do it again.
Absolutely. We've been talking to the great Joey Diaria on the Smoking Hot Podcast.
Now it's time for the Grand March, so follow me! Come on, buddy!